This has been a simple yet still quite a complex review because on the one hand, if you're already a Cyrus i9-XR owner and you're considering the PSU-XR upgrade, well then I can hand on heart say it's a no-brainer for you. It makes the i9 sound like a much bigger, smoother, richer, more engaging, much more enjoyable amplifier to listen to. So if that's all you came here for, well then I suppose review over for you. But it wouldn't be a Pursuit of Perfect System review without me looking much deeper than that, pushing the system to its absolute limit to find out what it's capable of. And yes, the PSU-XR will make the i9-XR sound like a bigger, better amplifier, but it makes it a bigger, more expensive amplifier. So if you're new to Cyrus, what does this all mean? And should you even be considering this British pairing in the first place? Cyrus are a British hi-fi manufacturer that actually manufactures their products here in the UK. And just a month or so ago, I actually visited their manufacturing facility in Nottingham. And I made a video about my visit, which if you haven't seen it, I can strongly recommend it to you. It's a great video, one that I'm really proud of, and it's packed with great information about how Cyrus manufacture their products to very stringent levels. And I'll link that video up the top there for you, but it'll also be in the video description box down below. I really can't stress enough, it's a video well worth checking out. And following my visit, Cyrus asked me if I would be interested to review their new PSU-XR, which is a new design of power supply upgrade for all Cyrus products, but really it's intended for their latest XR range. And it's the first of its kind, I think, a microprocessor controlled power supply that communicates with the Cyrus host product, and it can select from any of 5 individual galvanically isolated internal power supplies so that it can feed the exact power that the Cyrus host product needs. And it does it in a very clever way that reduces noise to levels lower than any previous power supply from Cyrus before, and that bit's really clever. But it also means that the PSU-XR is more flexible. It can be used with any of the Cyrus host products. But for the owner, that still means they will need one PSU-XR per host product. It's not like it can power more than one individual component, but it means that you can, I suppose, ring the changes. Maybe you listen to the PSU-XR on your Cyrus CD player one week and maybe your integrated amplifier the next week. And I like that because ringing the changes is sometimes fun to listen to the differences. Now, of course, I couldn't review the PSU-XR without something else from Cyrus, and they feel the i9-XR integrated amplifier, which features a Phono stage and DAC, really benefits sonically from the PSU-XR. So maybe take that on board if you own one. And why don't we start there? The i9-XR is Cyrus's top-of-the-range integrated amplifier, which looks very much like a Cyrus with their compact half-width design. That's very much Cyrus. I don't know what else to say other than that. But I do really like this new black finish. It's like a charcoaly matte black finish that's difficult to get on camera, but it's really, really nice in the flesh, and I definitely prefer it to like a kind of a glossy type of black, or sometimes that mottled black that we get with other products. So yeah, the black finish is particularly nice. And I also really like the touch sensitive buttons, which is probably the most modern thing going on here. The screen, it's okay, it's definitely not amazing, and I definitely couldn't see the volume sat back at my listening position, which is about 12 feet away, because the screen is much too small and I'm used to looking at small things. And if we flip the i9 around, you can see Cyrus haven't skimped on the connections, despite the i9 being so compact. But that is where things do start to get a little quirky for me. Firstly, there are no balanced connections, which does seem to be missing for a high-end integrated amplifier. Unless, of course, you're coming from valve or tube gear, in which case you might well be used to it, so maybe I'm being a little bit critical here. There's a good chance Cyrus will expect a lot of owners to be using the digital inputs, of which there are 5. USB, 2 optical and 2 SPDIF. And I do have a niggle here as well. I feel like if you're going to give us two SP-Diff digital inputs, well then please make one of them BNC for those that have that type of connection with another components in the system. I just think it always makes sense to have one of each maybe rather than both being SP-Diff. The i9-XR features a moving magnet phono stage, Cyrus's latest and greatest second generation of QXR DAC design. And then there is the really quirky bit for me, the dual speaker cable terminals that require a BFA connection. A BFA connection is what some audiophiles might know as or refer to as a Z plug or a Z plug, depending on where in the world you are. And the i9 comes with 4 of these. So maybe an owner could re-terminate their cable to be Z plug or Z plug or BFA, or maybe you could use, like I had to, use the included plug as an adapter. So I went in with Banana. Obviously, you can just use this as an adapter. And the only situation where I think you'd struggle is if you've got Spades, already own Spades. But, you know, a little bit quirky, I feel. Not many amplifiers would require this of someone. So I think, you know, if you're used to Cyrus, you're probably used to this. If you come in new to Cyrus, well then, you know, this is definitely something to be aware of. The amplifier in the i9-XR is Class AB that can deliver 91 watts of power into 6 ohms, which is a pretty modest power rating on paper, but let's be honest, we all know sound quality is not about watts anyway, it's about how they are delivered. And Cyrus say the power amplifier in the i9-XR is ultra wide bandwidth, extremely linear, and keeps phase shifts out of the audio band. The PSU-XR is a much more simple unit to deal with. It comes with a short umbilical type cable that you connect between the units. When you power on the i9, the PSU-XR is auto triggered. So it's a very simple upgrade to install. I think most owners will just install the PSU-XR and then just forget about it and just sit and listen to music, which is a great way to move us on to talking about the most important thing, of course, and that is sound quality. The Cyrus pairing, the i9-XR with the PSU-XR. To me, it's like a very nice quality, great quality white wine. It's light, it's airy, it's crisp, full of detailed flavors, but different to a good quality red wine that could be very thick and rich and, you know, mouth-engulfingly bold. That's my underlying tone for this review. One of the sonic strengths that stands out about the Cyrus pairing straight away is the very open, very see-through, very clear overall soundstage. And we kind of expected that, or I kind of expected that from a Cyrus. But what there is in combination with that is a setback type of sound, you know, a sound that goes beyond the speakers, that's set back, which is impressive, but it's also very lively and energetic. So the basis of the sound is sat back, but the music really wants to kind of come out and be energetic, which is an interesting combination, a combination that I actually really like. And the sound is focused, like ultra focused, for the full spectrum bass right up to the treble. And I found that this works particularly well with instrument-based music or band type of music, whether it's folk or whether it's jazz or maybe rock or classical. I don't listen to so much of that. And that is because with this open, clear, see-through soundstage, of course, we get really nice layering to the music. But better still was the details within the layering, the musical details, like the intricacies of, you know, instruments being played across a soundstage. And I think that will be, you know, a huge win or hugely appealing to a lot of different audiophiles, especially because it's not delivered in an overly analytical or an overly dry kind of way. And there's a really big difference there. In fact, the resolution of the music or the music's production is particularly good. Nothing is blurred or bloomed. It's all there for you to enjoy. And the focus and how tight the timing is, especially in the bass, is extremely impressive. And at times, the bass can actually come and really be quite percussive and really punchy and hit you in certain types of music, which is really impressive because it kind of catches you out, because the general sound presentation from the Cyrus pairing, I would say, is on a slightly, not too much, but on a slightly leaner, lighter area overall type of sound, especially in the kind of mid-bass region where it's focusing more on openness and spaciousness rather than fullness and boldness. Again, the white wine versus red wine. And this seems a very British amplifier sound thing, especially from that kind of, Huntingdon, Cambridgeshire type of region. And bass is always, and I do mean always, tight notes. And I listened through a ton of random music played with the radio function of my streamer app. So music was just coming on at random. And some music came on that was with some big brass, bold brass instruments. And one particular song, there was a trombone playing. And the level of musical insight, the insight into the trombone playing, and really I could almost feel like I could hear that the metal, the metallic sound of the actual trumpet horn itself. And I wish I'd made a note of what song that was, because it was a really impressive recording. And you know what? This level of insight and detail is really impressive. And I actually didn't know the Mission 770 were capable of that real intricate level of insight. And in the main, the overall music delivery from the Cyrus pairing, I would say, is smooth. And the treble is nice and airy and crispy and detailed, with one exception that maybe is a little bit nitpicky to even mention. The vocal delivery from the Cyrus pairing is always clear, it's always clean, ultra focused, and it's always sat in a nice space. There's always space around the vocals in the soundstage, which I always find impressive and always enjoy. But one thing I definitely noticed was that in music that has an obvious sibilance in the music, the Cyrus pairing didn't really kind of smooth or soften that over like some other setups or amplifiers can do. It kind of lays that out a little bit more bare, and that carries over into, I think, how vocals can be delivered from some amplifiers. Vocals can be in a little bit bloomed. They sound a little bit bloomed, and that means they can be a little bit more rounded sounding, a little bit more full and warm and lush sounding because they are bloomed. Now, again, that's not what the Cyrus pairing does. It kind of lays it out a little bit more bare, maybe a little bit too bare for some, again, depending on what you're used to. And yeah, interesting, because I kind of like it, actually. I kind of like it being bare. It just depends, I think, system, music, and all of these things that play into overall sound presentations. And this was definitely something that I noticed with a couple of other things when I did some comparison listening with the Lima Tucano 2 Anniversary integrated amplifier, which costs about the same as the Cyrus. And the Lima is a very powerful, very muscular sounding, excellent integrated amplifier. And straight away, the Mission 770 sounded more forward and more up front. The Lima is a really muscular sounding amplifier, as I mentioned, and it really wants to convey the energy of the performance. And I noticed straight away there was more fullness in the upper bass region, which gives vocals that rounded character that I just mentioned. And of course, I can't help but like that. But the overall composure and timing of the system was not quite as good as with the Cyrus Duo. It was a little bit more messy, or maybe you could call it a bit more live, raw sounding, which obviously suits some music better, maybe some tastes better. And the Lima kind of makes me like those attributes about the music delivery. It's like one of those things, it's like, it kind of peps you up a little bit when you listen to music delivered like that. But after a while, I did find myself missing the smoothness, the graciousness, and maybe the more sophisticated sound of the Cyrus Duo. So it's a difficult one to pick a preference from these two for me, but one definitely showed me the key sonic characteristic strengths of the other. The Phono stage that's built into the i9-XR, of course, with the PSU-XR, powering things as the upgrade, I was very impressed with, because it's just a very clean sounding, easy listen phono stage. Of course, it's only a moving magnet phono stage, and I don't think there are any controls or adjustment controls that maybe that would be limiting to some. But for the cartridge I'm using, the Goldring E3, with the upgraded Avid Ingenium turntable setup that I'm using, like I said, I've really enjoyed listening to records through the Cyrus pairing. Maybe it's not quite as an exciting listen as the Avid Pellar Phono stage that I use, an external, £1,000-ish external Phono stage, but maybe the built-in Cyrus is a little bit cleaner sounding. Either way, I don't think any audiophile would be, disappointed, unhappy with the sound of the built-in Phono stage. In fact, I could quite happily listen to records all day actually with this setup, and that's what it's all about. But what about the built-in QXR DAC? Well, firstly, there are seven different sound filter modes, and I didn't really notice a huge difference between them, but enough of a difference for me to, rule some in as favourites and rule some out pretty quickly. But I did a lot of the review with my reference DAC setup, and the built-in DAC sounded pretty close, which shows that it's a very good DAC. But the external, much more expensive DAC setup definitely sounded better, which is not a criticism, I kind of expected that. So let's talk Turkey. The Cyrus i9-XR costs £3,295, and the PSU-XR costs £2,395, so a combined cost of £5,690. So the Cyrus pairing does cost a serious chunk of hi-fi money, but of course you could buy them individually over time. So what happens when we take the PSU-XR away and listen to the i9-XR on its own? Well, all of the main bits of sound quality we have just discussed are still there. The general tone, the sat back but lively presentation are all very similar, of course, but the overall soundstage feels shrunk down from an expansive, immersive point of view, and there is more tension in the sound. And by this I mean it's just a more edgy, not as smooth and graceful sounding overall presentation, especially at louder volumes. And the bass loses a noticeable amount of its substantial capability and impact, and the timing is not nearly as precise. But it's the tension in the music that is really the big difference for me, that stands out really very quickly because of how that affects vocals and how that affects the high frequencies the most. And I think this situation was really readily apparent because of the way that I was doing the demo, which was to go backwards. So to listen to the system with the PSU-XR in the system and then unplug it and take it away. I think that was a more obvious change, or I could hear the difference more obviously going that way than I could going forwards. Up to, I think it's easier to go backwards from, if that makes any sense. And I think that's always the case. Live with it, listen to it for a while, then take it away. I think that's a great way to always test any upgrades. But the difference was there. For me, it's a big difference. For some, I think it would be a night and day difference. Very, very substantial difference. Now, of course, whether the difference is enough for you to justify the additional cost, that is personal. But the difference is real. I think it's very substantial, and I think, everybody will hear it. And I liked and enjoyed the i9-XR on its own, but I'm not sure if it would be my first choice of integrated amplifier with the Mission 770s, given what else I've reviewed around that kind of price point. That's just being honest. But adding the PSU-XR Power Supply totally changes the game, because it takes the i9's performance up a lot and makes it sound like a much more high-end integrated amplifier setup. And even then, it's not naturally the type of sound that I would go for, or that I kind of, naturally gravitate towards. But after listening to it over a period of time, and I've kind of it's gradually won me over and made me start to appreciate just listening to music in a slightly different way, a slightly more laid bare way, a slightly more detailed, intricate, detailed kind of way. But the only reason it's done that is because there has been really important things for me, like smoothness, graciousness, a good amount of bass impact, and a nice sound that I can just sit and relax to. And there's obviously a hell of a lot to be said for that. Now, I know what some of you will be thinking. Well, if the PSU-XR is so good as a power supply, why is that not built into the i9 instead of what's already in there? Well, actually, by all accounts, the best I understand it, is that they work in tandem, they work together. So the PSU-XR is like an addition rather than a replacement. So on that technical bombshell, I can recommend this as a pairing. Definitely, it's definitely worth checking out if you're shopping at this price point. And I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope you found it useful and helpful. Hit the thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. And of course, if you'd like to see more reviews like this, if you like my take on hi-fi reviewing, well then hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.